Okay, I'm going to look through this game and I'll make comments if I think I can say something useful. And at the end I will summarize and tell you what I think you can do to further improve your game. Okay, now I noticed you said that you prefer to play solid positional games, and it's clear from this opening that you prefer things to be solid. However, this is very passive, and I think you should maybe consider playing openings that aren't as passive. You can still play something solid like the King's Indian attack, or maybe even a Queen's Pawn game, and get into positions that are a bit more active for white. I noticed in the other game you sent me where you played black, you played something that aren't all that passive, and you actually got into a decent position. So maybe you should consider that you don't have to play these passive positions. Like in this case, your bishop is really passive since all the pawns are on the same color. And yes, it's solid, but also white doesn't have much ideas here that I can think of the top of my head. Okay, so let's just continue. Right, up to this point, I think everything is quite solid. You haven't made any mistakes. Okay, interesting idea. Maybe it improves the position of the bishop a little bit. But this is again proof that this type of moves is proof that your opening is very passive. And that is actually one of the reasons why I say maybe you should consider playing something a little bit more active, where you don't have bishops that are stuck like this and has to come back to try and activate them. Alright, this pawn move is, in my opinion, possibly your biggest mistake in the game. Now I know a computer engine will tell you this is not a mistake, and that is because the computer firstly doesn't understand this type of move as well, and also a computer knows how to deal with it because you can calculate much deeper. But the reason why I say this is a mistake is after you made this move, you've got a lot of weak squares around your king, and also you've got the possibility of the sacrifice knight takes f3. It's all things that you have to worry about now, and it's very difficult to calculate it. Maybe a computer can calculate everything successfully, but for a human behind the board to calculate all the tactics that become possible for black after a move like this is very difficult. So what would I suggest? Instead of playing f3, maybe a move like bishop to e3 looks better. It makes your king side safe, and then after that you can play for a move like c5. The idea is to activate this bishop, because your bishop really needs to be activated. Okay, so pawn to f3 I think was the move where most of your trouble started. Right, again here, king to h2. I'm not sure if it was necessary. You're probably scared of the sacrifices here on f3, and again, that's proof why you have to be careful before you move a pawn, particularly pawns near your king. And as I've mentioned, I think here the move c5 with the idea to activate your bishop on c4 is something you should think about. Alright, just to go on. Right, now after this sacrifice, white's position is very difficult to play. And the reason why it's so difficult is because this black knight can come in quickly, the rook is already putting pressure, the queen is putting pressure, and all of it is targeted towards your king's position. So it's extremely difficult for white to defend this position. Even if a computer is able to do it, a human player is going to struggle. And also this rook is taking time to develop. So that is why you feel the difficulty of the position. It's because your pieces aren't coordinated very well, and at the same time you've got to worry about the position of your king. Okay, so knight b6 is also unfortunate that you had to put it there, but in any case you're losing material if you don't. But the move like knight b6 is almost the same as losing material, because the knight is never going to help on the king side anymore, and this is where he's needed most of all. Okay, I think at this stage it just becomes too difficult for white to defend everything. Right now at this stage we've reached a position where most of the immediate danger is sort of under control, or shall I say some of the pressure has been diluted, but the problem is white is just losing here. Maybe white can try to fight on a bit, but the fact that he's down material, he's down the exchange, he's down a few pawns, and his king is exposed. So once you've reached a position like this, then you know that you've already made your mistakes. And trying to save a position like this, you can try, but you have to understand that you've already made the mistake. There's not much more that you can learn from this position. So to summarize, I think there's three things you should think about with regards to this game. Firstly, maybe you should consider playing openings that are a little bit more active. Something like King's Indian attack is solid but also quite active. Or if you want to play the English opening, go for the variation where you play g3. Let me just show you what I mean. After c4 and knight c3, you play, I'm just going to make any black moves now, you play this setup with the bishop coming to g2, bishop coming to g2, pawn going there, and you can play this setup. It's also very solid, but it's not as passive as the other variation you were playing. So that's the first thing I think you should think of. The second thing you should think of is to be more careful with pawn moves, particularly pawn moves near your king. The thing is, when you make the pawn move, it might not look so let's go to that position. It might not look so dangerous right away, but as the game continues, it becomes more clear how weak the squares around your king have become. So that's the second thing. Be more careful with pawn moves, particularly pawn moves near your king. And the third thing is to think a bit more about the evaluation process in how you can improve development of your pieces. I think if you were more aware of the fact that you need to improve the development of your pieces, then maybe you would have seen this c5 move. Of course, at this point it's tactically possible to play this move because you're threatening to follow up with bishop to c4, pinning the rook to the king. Okay, I hope you learned something from this review, and I'll try to check out your other games soon, and I hope you enjoy your next game. Cheers.